Good afternoon, YouTubers. William here with East Mesa Urban Homestead. So this is not going to be the traditional prepping video that most of you might be thinking. What I'm going to be talking about today is prepping for an imminent death or an unexpected death in the family. Why am I talking about this? Well, because this week we've had a tragedy in our family where we had somebody that died totally unexpected, very young, and this kind of brings back some memories. Just wanted to share with you some of my personal experiences with death, as far as how it's affected my life. And since 2015, I have had 6 deaths in my own family. My stepmother, my father, and my uncle died all within 3 months of each other. Then I had a stepsister that died, my stepfather that died, and then I had a son that died. Does that make me an expert on death? No. But what I want to talk to you about is preparing for the event of a death in your family. It's something that's going to happen to all of us, but a lot of people have these things happen and it's totally unexpected. When my stepmother died, it was totally unexpected. The death this week was totally unexpected. A lot of people are not prepared for that. So I just kind of want to go over some things with you that you can do to help yourself prepare for a death, so when it does come for somebody in your family or a friend, that you're ready for it. Was that person your loved one, or was it just a friend? Was it your wife, your husband, partner, a son, a daughter, whatever it is? Those things can have a devastating effect on you. It can have a devastating effect on the entire family. A lot of things have within the state. What state was it in? Were you living in the same state as the person that died? Was it out of state? Like for my father, he moved here, but only lived here very briefly, and he still had all of his estate, was still in Colorado, and I had to deal with all of that. You had to deal with probate lawyers, selling the house, fixing things in the house. He had cars, he had bank accounts, he had retirement funds, he had a lot of stuff that I had to deal with. Dealing with things like that from long distance, it can be hard. You can't just jump in a car and just drive down the street. So you have to be prepared for that. I suggest that you go out and get a living will made. Get a will that is going to cover your estate. What you want to happen with you when you die, or when your loved one dies. I don't want anybody to have to go through that, but it's going to happen. You need to make sure that you have powers of attorney. You have to have medical powers of attorney. Some people die of terminal illness. They know it's coming. You still have to get prepared for it. What if you got divorced and you had a will, and you never changed it? That could be a big effect on the estate of the person that died. What about bills, cars, banks, stock, IRAs, retirement accounts? There's a lot of things that you have to think about and make sure that you have ready in case something happens to you or your loved one. I suggest, if someone does die and they have assets, they suggest getting a lawyer. Here in Arizona, we had to do probate in my father's estate. I had to wait a year before we could do anything, and then it's still in probate right now for IRS purposes. So we still have money in a probate account that is going to cover any unexpected taxes that might occur, or that they didn't pay, or whatever that the IRS says that they owe. Real estate. He had a nice piece of property, but both him and my stepmother were older, and the house kind of got run down. I had to replace carpeting. The whole house had to be painted. A lot of repairs. The yard needed to be cleaned up. He had acreage lot, and it was a lot of hard work and a lot of time on the phone. A lot of my time on the weekends away from my family, trying to get his estate in order so that we could get it over with. You got to think about, does a person want to be buried? Does a person want to be cremated? Where did that person want to be buried? What do they want to do with their ashes when they're cremated? Funeral arrangements. I mean, funerals, even cremations, are very expensive. There's a lot of things, a lot of expense. Do you have money for that? Did they have burial cost insurance? Did they have any life insurance policies? Did they have anything like that? A lot of those things can have a profound effect on what happens to your loved ones once they are gone. Are you going to have the money to do what they want? Do you have the money to do a funeral for somebody? Do you have the money to do a cremation? They're not cheap. So those are a lot of things that you need to really start looking at. You got to pick a funeral home. Did they want flowers? Did they want somebody to write a eulogy and things like that? How do you contact people that they knew? There's a lot of social media out there, but not everybody uses those things. So how are you going to contact somebody that was in their life, that may be out of state or maybe even local, but you just don't know how to get a hold of them? What if that person was from another country that lived here? How do you let their relatives know over there in another country? What about their religious beliefs? Do you know what their religious beliefs are? Do you know what kind of burial ceremonies they might want? Those are things that you need to really start to plan for. Even if you're young, you still need to plan for it. How do you write an obituary? You go to a funeral home and they help out with a lot of those things, but do you have this family support to help you plan these things? When somebody close to you dies, it can have an effect on people that they can't function correctly. They can't make decent decisions, or sound decisions, I should say. Were they in the military? Did they want a military funeral? How do you get a hold of somebody to do that for you? How do you go about selling their home? How do you go about selling their cars? If they had titles to those cars, were they still making payments on them? There's just a lot of things that you need to start thinking about. And when my father died, I wasn't expecting it. So handling arrangements for someone who has died, whether it's expected or not, it takes a lot of time and energy to complete. It's a very important responsibility to carry out the plans that they want, their wishes, the directions and desires of that person. They want to be remembered in a certain way. So, if you have to make those decisions without any guidance, it can be a very demanding process. So I just want everybody to kind of think about those things. You have to prepare for it, especially if you're married and you have kids. You have young kids. Do you have life insurance policy that's gonna help your family out when you're gone? A lot of people nowadays, they don't even have savings account, or they have very little in a savings account. Is that going to cover the cost of a death? That for medical bills maybe. Is it going to cover for funeral costs? What are you going to do with your kids if it's both the parents? It happens all the time where the mother and father die and they leave kids. Who's going to take care of those kids? You know, do you want those kids to be just taken by anybody? You know, you want to make sure that you have your affairs in order in case this happens, because it's going to happen to you sooner or later, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that it's already happened to and weren't prepared for it. Just start thinking about it. Thanks. Talk to you later.